Nicole, what have we done?
What have we done?
Well, what we've done is we've developed tools to help people like you find direction and purpose in life. So I'm Phil, and this is Nicole, and we're Nicole and Phil with Purpose. In this episode, we're going to recap season 1. But first, if you haven't already figured it out, both Nicole and I are followers of Jesus because we believe that he is the only way to a lifelong and past an earthly life kind of peace and contentment. But that does not have to mean that you have to be a Christian or a follower of Jesus to participate. For those of you who are considering it, you don't have to, considering turning this off because of our faith, you don't have to, just because we have different convictions. I hope you keep listening. So please give us a shot, but we will talk openly about our beliefs, but preaching is not our aim. All right, so here we are, recap of our season 1. So let's just get right started with our visuals.
Yeah, and let me just say that
go ahead.
As Phil and I were planning what we wanted to do for this season-ending episode, we decided it would be interesting and beneficial to kind of step back episode to episode and recap what our key idea from each episode was. And obviously, we urge you, if something piques your interest here, go back and listen to that episode. Those are available for you as resources, and we just encourage you to listen and then also connect back if you would like to.
That's right. So the very first episode, we talked about the strategy. And we actually had an episode 2 where Nicole was gone and I was by myself, and we talked about my strategy. So we're going to kind of combine those two episodes and discuss those together. Here, as you can see up here, this is a strategy template. A strategy is your particular way, your battle plan for living out your purpose in life. That's what a strategy is in our toolkit here. And Nicole and Phil with Purpose. So I'm not going to go over this in detail today, but you can do that if you go back into past episodes like Nicole was mentioning. But I have adjusted this visual a little bit. You'll be able to see. I know you guys can't see the cursor on the screen, and some of you may just be listening as well. But in the upper right-hand corner, I now have what we call the motivation. I'm going to move Nicole's face here a little bit. The motivation, the why behind your strategy, the why behind your life. It all starts with that. Somebody, you almost ask almost any businessman or any business or any person that's really successful.
Or businesswoman.
Businesswoman. You're right.
Business person.
that your motivation is everything starts with that, and then that's what stems where your goals stem off from, and your action steps to even your core life principles are going to stem off from your motivation. So if you'll see here my strategy, my chicken scratch here, the very top I put glorify the name of Jesus because I love him, and that's my overall motivation. That's my overall why for my life, and so then all my goals all stem off from that. So again, there's the strategy template. There are some guidelines to creating your strategy that would include your goals. It's ideal if they are measurable, but it's not required. They don't have to be. So
I hear you. I hear the educator in you coming out. Make sure your goals are measurable.
That's right. That's right. And then it will connect with the circle of congruence, which is a visual we're going to get into in a little bit here. And it connects to your sweet spot, and that's what Nicole's going to get into next. These goals might be a mixture of short-term, medium-term, long-term goals as well. So some of them, we've talked about this before, so this is repetitive if you've been watching and listening, but some of them may be a week or two or a month or two goals. Some of them may be a year goal. Some of them may be a 10-year goal. But a mixture is good of your goals. Flexibility is needed when you're going through and creating your goals. Life circumstances change. It's not going to change who you are in your motivation, but it may change a goal because of your circumstances have changed. So you need to be flexible, or we need to be flexible within the goals that we set. It's so important to have regular reflection and make adjustments as necessary. That is so critical to reflect on these goals and on our strategy on a regular basis. By the way, within our tools, Nicole and Phil with Purpose tools, this is the only one that you actually would write out Our other ones are more visual by nature. This is visual too, but you can actually print this off. Go to our website, philwithpurpose.com, and print this off, and then write out your own strategy as well. So, and then goals will vary from person to person. Hey, 1 Corinthians 12, we are one body with many parts. So even though we may have the same motivation, we're going to have different goals and different ways to get to those goals. And then the visual representation doesn't have to look like this one. So the one that you see on the screen, where it's triangular and it all kind of points to the center, it doesn't have to be that. You can be your own visual representation. Make it what you want it to be. And then followers of Jesus will often, have the same overlying motivation. Well, they will, because it's to glorify the name of Jesus, and that's definitely our motivation. But it will look different, like I said a couple points ago. All these points that I just went over are on the website on philwithpurpose.com and on the strategy, so you don't have to memorize these. Now, Nicole. Now, what would you say is your motivation, your why, the reason for the goals that you have in your life?
Yeah. Again, Jesus Christ is the center of who I am and why I keep one foot in front of the other, right? So I would state it a little differently, again, as Phil said, based on our just personalities and experiences. We're going to articulate things a little differently, but I would say my number one motivation is to know Jesus Christ more deeply. Notice I said know Jesus Christ, not know about Jesus Christ, right? So it's about relationship. It's about knowing him more fully and then making him known to other people. Underneath that, I think I have two others that I would connect back to that main one of knowing Jesus Christ more deeply. Would be one, helping people to live with a clear sense of identity. There's a lot of things in this world that want to define our identity. Jesus Christ ought to be at the core of our identity. Everything, not this little appendage that we pull out at Christmas time or Easter or on Sundays. So it's helping myself and others to have Jesus at the core of our identity. And then for me, an important thing, and I talked about this in a couple different episodes, is embracing our creativity as an important part of image bearing. Now, don't equate creativity with artistry.
Yeah, with drawing.
You don't have to be a good drawer. You don't have to be a good painter. All of us, however, are creative in some way.
That would exclude me if it took being a good drawer.
But woodworking.
Yeah, I do like,
cooking, gardening, all of those things. I believe that's an important part of who we are in Jesus Christ and how we can reflect our creativity back to him, because it's his he's the one who is the ultimate creator and who created us in that image. So I would say those three would be where I would point you. And so another of our important resources that we've talked about along the way is the sweet spot. Phil's a baseball player. I am a softball player. We both played in college. And so the idea of a sweet spot usually has to do with that feeling, right? When you just connect with that ball and right now it's like gone, right?
Or for me as a pitcher, it's where the spot where I threw the ball, the perfect pitch.
Absolutely. When we talk about purpose and the sweet spot, and again, there's a diagram here that Phil just put up on the screen. We're looking at sort of a Venn diagram of how we think about that question of what is our motivation? Because some of you might be thinking, I have no idea what my motivation is. I have no idea what my purpose is. And so number one, and again, if you go back to the episode on this, we pose some very specific questions that can help you kind of zero in on what is your motivation, what is your purpose.
And they're on the website as well under Sweet Spot.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, how was I created? What's my personality like? What kind of abilities and competencies? How do I think about the world, right? That kind of helps us, again, not random, right? God created us intentionally. There are many places in the Bible and Psalms and in Jeremiah that talk about how God knit us together intentionally. He almost like a masterpiece. In fact, the Bible uses that word. We are his masterpiece. So he equipped us in a very unique way. It's not random. We're not a random development of cells that just kind of happen, that God is an intentional creator. So how did he create you? Number two, what kinds of experiences have you had in life that have shaped you? What kind of people have you come across? What kind of world have you experienced, and how has that shaped your view of the world, your understanding of yourself? You know, I think of somebody who's had a difficult trauma in their lives, maybe even as a young child. That shapes how you think. And sometimes we think, oh, you know, that kind of thing can't go on to be used for good. But if we start to kind of reframe our experiences and think about how even the most difficult, I mean, God never wants situations of abuse and trauma and neglect. But if that is a part of our experience in a fallen world, God promises us that he can redeem that. He can use that as part of our story to help us impact others around us positively. So what kinds of people, experiences have shaped you? That's the second piece. And the third is, what kinds of open doors have you found in your life? What kinds of opportunities? What makes your heart beat? What draws your attention? You know, if we have two people in the same situation, we're going to be drawn to different things in that situation. And that says something about who we are. And so I have this in my office, this quote that says, the world needs who God created you to be. And that's really what the sweet spot is, right? How did God create us in such a way that we can have an impact on the world positively through how he created us? That's what the sweet spot is all about.
All right. So one of the next episodes, we talked about one of Nicole's favorite words that I made up. Directionless.
I had nothing to do with this term. I want to reiterate that again.
Directionlessness is not for you. And just speaking very, very, very briefly about that, it's the truth. Direction. I think it kind of you can understand what it's saying just by what the word is. Directionlessness is not for you. How
many syllables is that? Directionlessness. Right. 5 syllables.
So have a strategy. That's my encouragement. That's our encouragement to you. Have a strategy that we just went over. Find that sweet spot that Nicole just talked about, because we all have it. Sometimes it takes work for us to figure that out, and we have to put some energy and effort into actually thinking about those things. And then you'll see the next visual coming up here. Love with congruence. So this is our final just visual. It's called the circle of congruence. And what the circle of congruence is it's basically a way to display our balance in life, to have contentment in how we're spending our time, our resources, and our energy in God's given purpose for his glory. So as you can see, unless you're just listening, you won't be able to see it. You can see it on the website again. But this is on the website. But our circle of congruence is all about having the proper balance between how much we spend on ourselves or with God, you know, and by ourselves, because we need that. We need that time when it's just him and him and us, him and me. And then, you know, sometimes we also need to spend focused time with our family. They need our time. They need our resources. They need our love and care. They need it. If we starve them of that, that's going to have repercussions. So we need to make sure we do that. We also need to spend time focused on others, because if we're always about me, or we're always about our families, or we're always about others, that's an unhealthy balance. So every single person is going to be a little different. What a healthy balance is for you, and how much time you spend in the me category, or even with God, time meditating, prayer and Bible reading, that sort of thing. But even just to watch a show by yourself, or whatever that may be, to recoup, to recover from whatever the day's events were. Family, and then others as well. We need to make sure that we spend time. Each one of those are going to be unique for every person. Now, others would be, the world, anything out in the world, basically, with our friends in our community, with our coworkers, out in nature. Those are really valuable experiences that we can have for them and for us as well. Like spending time with others. Plus, God says to love others, right? Love me and love others. So if we never spend time in that category, we're not doing what God has called us to do. And that builds this overall congruence in our life that has an eternal impact to it. And then our next episode, we talked about, you want to add anything? By the way, I'll give you an opportunity to add anything to what we just talked about.
I don't think so.
Okay. Then the next one was contentment can be a liar. And I'm just going to speak very briefly to this. There are people who I believe are legitimately content and happy with their life, but they are deceived. And what I mean by that is they literally they feel really good. They have everything they could ever ask for, and they feel content. They even maybe have a nice balance in how they spend their time between their family, themselves, and others. But if you're missing a very important piece, I mean, the most important piece, that piece of, knowing Jesus Christ as your Savior, people that feel that contentment it's a false contentment. It's not going to have an eternal value to it. It's not. It's going to deceive you because this world will end. Your life here on this earth will end, and it does matter how you spend your decisions, your time here on this earth for eternity. So that was one. Yeah. That's 3 minutes of one episode.
I'll just jump on to that. Something to add there. I think it's a fairly bold statement to say that apart from Jesus Christ, we can never be truly content. But it is the truth.
True contentment, yeah.
We were created by our great Creator God with His imprint on us, His way, His love, His grace, His mercy. They're woven through us, the core of every human being. And it's not just Christ followers who are image bearers of Jesus, of our Creator God. Every human being is an image bearer. If we as humans don't acknowledge and seek God, we are missing a piece, an essential core piece of who we are. And ultimately, that is going to prevent us from having true purpose, contentment apart from our Creator. So again, I realize that is probably not going to sit well with some people. But I think to be bold about that truth is really important. And I hope that if that's not part of your worldview, that you would wrestle with that idea.
And earthly contentment is temporary. Mm-hmm. Eternal contentment is eternal. It never ends. It goes on forever. And that's just to echo or to add on to what Nicole is saying. And
so then we brought Barbie into the picture, right? The Barbie craze has hit hard here in West Michigan, and I'm sure across the country. But we talked about being an Esther in a Barbie world. There's lots of things in this world that try to motivate us, right? Things like fame and power and achievement and wealth. Again, not that there's anything inherently wrong in any of those, but when we seek those things for our purpose to define us, in a quest for contentment, they will always fall empty. And so we talked about the Billie Eilish song, What Was I Made For? And it reminded me just the juxtaposition. There you go. Directionlessness, juxtaposition, right?
I think that's an actual word, though.
Juxtaposition of Barbie and Esther. Esther, I urge you, if you haven't read the story in the Bible, go to Esther and read it. Esther was a woman who knew her Lord and Savior, and she was used by Him in a powerful way, not just for her own good, but for the good of the entire nation of the Jews. And it's amazing to see how Esther, one of the verses in Esther says, this is what you were created for. And that's that whole sweet spot, right? How were we created? What were we created for? And sometimes I think we look at Bible characters and we think, well, yeah, that was in Bible times. Of course, people had holy purpose then. And we are here to say you have holy purpose now. Mm-hmm. So we talked about being an Esther in a Barbie world.
And then we went on and had two wonderful guests, Sheriff Cole and Sheriff Mast. Mast is from Oceana County and Sheriff Cole is from Mason County. And we had just a wonderful interview with them. And we talked about the consequences of living a life without purpose and without direction. And that's, people in jail. Unfortunately, that's sometimes where people end up when they live without direction and purpose. But then on the other hand, we started appreciating, and I'm glad Nicole pointed it out while we were recording, started appreciating the fact that we had a model, two sheriffs, of people who were that live with direction and purpose, and showing it, by their stories. And that was probably my favorite episode to date.
That was a powerful experience.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was, you can go back and watch that one too if you'd like. It's in the list of episodes.
Yeah, what struck me is obviously two very highly educated men, but the reason why they are so convicted in the work that they do with people in the jail is because they have a sense of purpose. And they want not only to clarify their own purpose, but to help others who have made some less than favorable decisions with major consequences, to help them clarify their purpose and live with purpose, and hopefully give them hope for a second or third chance. So yeah, I would highly recommend going back and listening. Very good, helpful episode. And then we talked about failure, everybody's favorite topic. We started by saying that, we don't have good models of people who fail in a positive way. And what I mean by that, obviously failure is something that most of us try to avoid and we don't necessarily hope for. But it's a part of life. We all fail at some point or another, and some of us fail, in more frequent ways. But the whole idea of how we approach failure, failure can be a great teacher, a great clarifier and magnifier of purpose. And it can help us to clarify and to grow and to gain insight. When we fail, I think the human inclination is to tag that to who we are. Like, I'm not capable of success. I'm never going to succeed. And it threatens to become a part of who we are. And if we step back, if our identity is firmly rooted into Jesus Christ, there's a great book by Tim Keller on this. I think I've shared it. The joy of self-forgetfulness. And, we shouldn't be defined by our successes. We shouldn't be defined by our failures, because we're defined by Jesus Christ. And when we do that, there's a solidity there that says, you know what, this world can bring me whatever failure it wants. This world can bring me whatever success it wants. I am firmly grounded in the center by Jesus Christ as my core. So it allows, I think, being rooted in Jesus Christ allows you to look at failure differently. It's not, we still have those emotions of sadness and grief and anger, and that's just part of how we were made to be as humans. But we don't have to be defined by failure. And a growth mindset says, well, in actuality, failure can be a place where great growth and progress and possibility happen.
Absolutely. And some of my biggest failures in life are the times that I grew the most.
Absolutely.
And God will be our strength in his weakness, or in our weakness, he will be our strength.
And, people need, I work a lot with teenagers and with children, and our kids and teenagers need to see adults who know how to fail well.
Yeah.
And what I mean is that we can't avoid failure. It's going to be part of our lives at some time or another, but how we respond to that, who we look to be our ultimate rock in those times. Kids are watching you. Teens are watching you. Parents, your kids are absolutely looking at what you do when you fail. Our kids need good models of how to learn from failure, not just how to, ignore it or pretend it didn't happen.
When I came to the point in life where I realized that failure is just a part of it, it's not a matter of when, but if, or if, but when.
Yep.
That actually brought me a little bit of peace.
Yeah.
I don't have to be perfect all the time. I don't, I still want to strive to, for
excellence.
Excellence and perfection in God's eyes. But there's going to be failure. Exactly.
And then finally, living in the in-between. So Phil and I shared with you that we actually did a house flip-flop, right? And we're now, 3 weeks into that?
I think so. Yeah. Thanksgiving. Yeah.
I still haven't found my other black shoes. I did have to go purchase a new pair. My cats are still, I think, sometimes going to Phil's house wondering what in the world. But we are settling in. And I know, Phil, you gave your first tour yesterday, or a tour to friends. And so
there's a black cat there today.
Ours is
I don't
black.
think, it's almost been a stray cat. Yeah.
But we talked about those in-between times where you just feel a little discombobulated. Right, we're doing multi-syllabic words
But
today.
you're using real words.
I'm a little afraid of the creative word skills that Phil
I can make up a lot of
has,
words.
I'm sure. But, sometimes we hit those seasons of in-between where what is normal, what is predictable, what is routine is no longer. And maybe it's a new house or a new job or a relationship that has failed, whether a divorce or a breakup. And again, I think the world says we should fall apart when that happens. We should, drown in worry. And God gives us a different way, doesn't he, Phil, to handle those in-between times. Anything to add there?
Yeah, and as we're speaking to you right now, is this you? Is this where you're at? Are you at an in-between time? And I want to speak just some assurance to you in your life right now that things will get better. It's not always going to be the in-between time. There is going to be some stability again. And, hang on to that marriage, hang on to your life, hang on to that, I don't know, hang on to that job. I don't know. It depends on your circumstance, but, just try to, I encourage you to not make any, rash decisions that you don't feel like you're strongly convicted by. Use our tools. I think that can really help you kind of get through these times. So
in between can feel very uncomfortable. It can feel like you're just kind of drifting. There can even be some anxiety and depression. And, part of that is normal. And of course, we would never suggest that you stay in a destructive pattern I think the in-between becomes a real place where we can develop a faith that, if everything's going predictably well, we don't really have to have faith, right?
Right.
But it's when things are all of a sudden ambiguous or just a great sense of loss, just we feel completely disoriented. It is that, even in my own experience in between times, I find, sometimes there's that period of complete disorientation. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I can choose to pray about this. And so it can be a place where we can cultivate a deeper prayer practice. It can also be a time when we're building spiritual muscle. And sometimes moment to moment, we have to say, Lord, I am very tempted to fall into fear here and worry, but I'm going to trust you. And that's not a one-time thing. In the in-between time, sometimes you have to remind yourself moment by moment, I do trust you, Lord. Help me to trust you. I do trust you, right? And we have to keep on because the world wants to pull us away and wants us to swim in that anxiety and worry. But God says, fear not.
Well, and even we want to pull ourselves. We kind of want to wallow a little bit sometimes.
Sure.
And yeah, it is. That's a great point. Reminding ourselves, even telling ourselves, hey, we're just going to trust you, Lord.
Yep. And stepping back, Ephesians 2 is one of my favorites, right? We are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works. That's all intentionality, right? We were created. It's not like we fell into good works. It's we were created for this, which God has prepared in advance for us to do. And so it sounds pat, but I just want to say that when we can step back and say, Lord, you created me as your masterpiece. I know you have a plan that was destined, that you knit together, the purpose and how I was knit together. And I'm going to trust you in that, even though right now it feels really ambiguous and maybe I doubt. God wants to hear that too. Lord, I doubt you. I'm fearful. Help me in my unbelief, right? When we do that, that in-between moment gives us a chance to really grow spiritually.
And I was at a point in time in my life where I would want to hide from God during those times and kind of push him away. Thankfully, I'm to a point now where I'm embracing him and running to him. Not all the time, but more than I used to. And that's so key.
Absolutely. So I wanted to talk a little bit as we kind of move toward wrapping up here about a little assignment. As you know, I'm a college professor, and so after I leave here today, I have 31 senior portfolios waiting for me to grade. But there's an assignment I did with my seniors this year. So senior psychology students, many of them heading into counseling careers. And there is a business, Harvard Business School has done this exercise for many years. And I decided to try this with my senior psychology students. And some of you are familiar probably with the poet Mary Oliver. She has amazing poetry. And I'm going to pull from one of her poems called The Summer Day. And at the end of this poem is a very compelling question, and this is it. What is it that you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? What is it that you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? So I gave this assignment to my students. So first day of class back in September, they wrote kind of an initial first draft. We tucked those away. And then in the last couple of weeks, as they were giving their final senior talks, they rewrote their answer to that question. And it was quite interesting and amazing to hear their difference, even just across a few months. What is it that you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And I love that question because it gets right to the heart of exactly what we're talking about, your purpose, your strategy, your motivation. And we get one life, and we're never, we are not guaranteed the next moment, the next day. And so, the reason why Nicole and Phil with Purpose exists is to help every single person under our influence take steps forward in defining their purpose and rooting their purpose in the God who created them. And we obviously have several different ways that we try to go about doing that. But if you have a few moments, even as we approach the new year, and you're not a New Year's resolution kind of person, but just pondering, even writing down some thoughts. What is it that you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?
Yeah, that's a great question. What is it that you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And just think about what strategio means, strategy means your battle plan. Mm-hmm. So what is their battle plan for life? Absolutely. And that doesn't mean we're going to war, but in a way we are. Yep. I mean, life is it's a battle. Yep. And but we can learn, love to embrace it and enjoy as much as we can, and even through the hard times. So yeah, thanks, Nicole, for that. Absolutely. All right, so looking ahead. Well, first of all, thank you to those of you that have been hanging out with us over these 9 episodes, 9 recordings. I've had a great time, and I've been interacting with some of you, and some of you have had some really nice things to say, and strong words of encouragement. Thank you for that. Thank you for those that have pressed the like button, that make comments. Those things all matter, and we talked about that before. Again, our motivation is not for our own glory, but to point to the one who deserves it. Now, looking ahead, here are some items we are considering to get our message out there in front of more of you. One thing is thinking about maybe even putting some of my own energy and resources into boosting posts on Facebook and YouTube, and creating some YouTube shorts and those sorts of things. So be on the lookout for those. But there's also these podcast forums that we're kind of peeking at. So maybe those people that don't like the YouTube video thing, but they would listen, we can take advantage of that resource. But we actually, just on the way here, I just talked with a pastor, and we just set up a time where, and we haven't set the date yet, but we're going to host, they're going to host, or I guess we're going to be guests, I guess I'll say it that way, and they're going to host us for 2 hours on a Saturday morning, maybe 2.5 hours on a Saturday morning. And Nicole and I are just going to present and interact and hopefully it's going to be one of those really rich times where, it gets people thinking, and it gets people thinking, living with a purpose and direction, and hopefully it spreads, because that's we don't want this thing to be just held to our chest. Yeah. So we have the resources that you can put some things down on paper, but maybe it just doesn't happen, and maybe doing it in okay, these are 2 hours on a Saturday that I can go away from everything distracting at home and really focus. Maybe get your strategy down on paper, your motivation, or at least start.
So we will definitely lead you through some exercises to help you get, kind of take that next step, whatever that looks like in honing in on your purpose and your strategy.
Yep. And we're thinking maybe doing one a month, next year. At least I'm thinking, I haven't talked to Nicole about this, but I'm thinking maybe one a month, starting in February. I'd love for that anyway. And then maybe one video a month, something like this. But again, these videos we're not intended just for Nicole and I to talk or even to have, guests, even though that worked great when the sheriffs were here. But we really want to talk with you. We want to talk about your strategy. We want to talk about your circle of congruence. We really think that's the direction we want to go with this. Kind of like Dave Ramsey talks about financial things with people. We want to talk about living in purpose and direction in your life.
Yeah. I want to just echo, Phil, what you said. It's, just to know that even one person was influenced by our discussion and maybe even ask some new questions about their creator and about their purpose. Mm-hmm. I'm just so grateful for those of you who jumped in, whether through comment or like, or saying, hey, have you checked out this podcast? All of that matters, and all of it points to the reason why we do it. So
that's right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you guys have a wonderful Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Yes. Happy New Year.
And we will be back sometime next year, maybe February-ish. And we haven't decided exactly, but we'll be back here doing this because I feel like this is a great way to get the word out. Yeah. So we'll see you all sometime soon.
Thank you.